Later tourists came to observe the care, comfort, and treatment of patients. Some asylum tourists in the Victorian era were fascinated with medicine and focused on philanthropy. These visitors came to act as inspectors, concerned with the care and comfort of the patients. Guests commented on how few patients were under restraint, how gentle the treatment was. In the process, Bedlam began being regarded as a benevolent institution. However, patients who were considered dangerous were kept out of sight of visitors, keeping some of the less gentle treatment away from prying eyes. Over time, tourism shifted from viewing the insane to viewing the asylum grounds. As viewing the patients for entertainment began to be looked down upon, the asylum tours were advertised as a chance to view the architecture and gardens connected to the building. Asylums often took up large, beautiful buildings that could be marketed toward tourists, and their grounds could be advertised in traveling guidebooks as sights to see. This allowed tourism to continue without sounding exploitive to the patients. New regulations in the Victorian era made asylum tourism heavily class-dependent. As the Georgian era turned to the Victorian, asylum tourism still existed, albeit sparingly, because it had become a pastime of the upper classes. Rather than currying donations, asylums set a ticket price, and only those who could afford it were admitted. In 1825, the Bedlam governors declared that guests could only visit the asylum with written permission from a governor. This meant potential visitors had high enough standing to ask for such a favor from high-ranking men. Growing awareness of abuses in the Georgian era led to a drop in tourism. In the Georgian era, asylum tourism began to drop off as cultural attitudes and understandings of mental illness changed. The public began to be aware of the abuses of the system and to shy away from such spectacles. Starting in the 1760s, asylum tourism began to decline. At the same time, mental institutions were adapting, becoming more financially independent. They no longer required desperate bids for donations. Asylums were a place for the poor and powerless. At the time, mental asylums served as a site where the poor and disenfranchised could be locked away when they developed any perceived mental issues. Those with money were usually cared for at home or in private asylums established for the better care of their wealthy patients. Not everyone with a mental illness was sent to the asylum. Even among the poor, some people were still cared for at home, and others were left on the streets as beggars nicknamed Tompo Bedlams. Early asylum patients were considered akin to animals. Early asylums began in England as a form of imprisonment. They were for those who were raving and furious and capable of cure, or, if not yet, are likely to do mischief to themselves or others. Until 1619, they were not even run by medical professionals. In the 1700s, conditions improved little. The mentally ill were considered beings that, without their reason, had descended to the level of animals. Even when King George III developed a mental illness, he was retrained, sedated, and treated with many harsh procedures of the time, including bleeding, blistering, and purging. Early asylum tourism created a patient spectacle to secure donations. Eventually, patients were displayed as a tactic to secure donations. Governors encouraged high-class sightseers to help fund the asylum by paying to see the beasts. The asylum entertained visitors with spectacle, a common tactic in charity of the time. This voyeuristic tactic came from the hope that the wealthy onlookers would donate money to the asylum. According to Mary Chapman, the oldest psychiatric asylum in Britain, Bethlehem began opening its doors from the early modern period as a way of courting donations from an entertained public. The story of these prying eyes, and what exactly it was that they looked for, tells us much about changing popular attitudes to mental illness. These visits also reveal the intensity of citizen interest in medicine during the 19th century, and the ways in which this interest was encouraged or curtailed by physicians.
Tourists paid to observe the patients and see the beasts.
Before the 1770s, mental institutions welcomed visitors to observe the patients as a form of voyeuristic entertainment. Bethlehem Royal Hospital of London, or Bedlam, as it came to be known, charged a shilling to see the ravings of the beasts, and the patients were put on display like a human zoo. Cultural historian Mike J. has described it thus: particularly on Sundays and holidays, the scene in the galleries could be boisterous and rowdy, like a ghost train or a freak show, or indeed the surgery and autopsy demonstrations that were also on offer to the London public. It offered an extreme but safely contained experience, and a stage on which high-spirited visitors could perform acts of daring or display their wit.
Hey guys, thank you so much for the support and likes and comments down below, and also thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to see you in the next video. Then take care, bye.